Hello everyone, and welcome back to Our Eyes on Indie. My name is Finn, and it's my absolute pleasure to bring you our review of Stray Gods, the role-playing musical, developed by Summerfall Games and published by Humble Bundle. This is a game that a lot of people have had their eyes on for quite some time, and after having gotten to play through the game a few times now, I'm finally ready to give my full in-depth review. So, the question before all of us, does this game have a good tune, or is the game out of tune? Well, let's get in and find out. So, in Stray Gods, you play as Grace, a singer who's done with college and is now trying to figure out what the heck she's going to do with her life. Things obviously go in a crazy direction pretty quickly, with the most recent muse dying in your arms, and now you've become the new muse and have to prove your innocence to the other idols. The idols are the Greek gods living amongst us in the modern day society, but of course hidden from all of us regular folk, the mortals. So, with that, the concept of the story is nothing new, right? If you've read American Gods or Percy Jackson or anything like that, then you're very familiar with this concept of these ancient gods living among us just in secret and having their own underground society, as it were. And while unoriginal is definitely something that comes to mind throughout the entire plot of this, it never felt terrible. I enjoyed the plot. Honestly, it was great. I liked the setting. I liked the whole, here are these gods hidden among the humans. I think it's a really cool concept, and the different ways it gets done throughout every iteration I read or playthrough of it, whatever it may be, I still find it interesting. It's something cool. And the characters in this game are really good. For example, Apollo is one of the first gods you're going to meet, was one of my favorite characters, just the whole way he was written, and oh man, the performances of every single actor in the game are outstanding. There was never a character that made me go, you sound kind of off. Everyone sounded fantastic throughout the entire game. Whether it's just some of the side characters like Eros, who you only get to talk to a few times, or it's someone like Apollo or Persephone, who, depending on what you do, you're going to be able to talk to a bit more. Every single one of them is fantastic. Some of the best performances in a game I've heard in quite some time, to be perfectly honest with you. So again, the story, while not entirely original, it's still fantastic, and the characters are wonderful. And while none of the plot twists caught my attention as, oh man, I didn't see that coming, I pretty much saw all the plot twists coming as I went throughout the game, they were still good. If you don't see them coming, then hey, that's better for you. You're going to enjoy it a lot more. None of them are terrible plot twists just because I saw them coming. They're just nothing that surprised me. So, how does the game actually play? You know, I've already talked about the characters and the plot and how, well, I thought it was unoriginal, it was still good, and the characters are great, but how's the game play? Is it original? We all know going into this what this game has been promising and boasting. It's a visual novel, but with musical numbers, right? And so the whole thing with any visual novel, if you've played a visual novel game before, which for me, the last visual novel I played was Pyre. And Pyre is one of my favorite games of all time. I really, really love Pyre. But visual novels as a whole are not my genre. So as someone that's not a big visual novel guy, how did I enjoy this game? I enjoyed it immensely. The gameplay is, like I said, it's a visual novel through and through. The whole thing, you're going to be listening to dialogue, you're going to be making your own dialogue choices, and then you're going to get into the songs, ladies and gentlemen. You're going to get into the musical numbers, and oh man, this is where the game shines. Now, the very first song of the game, while it's an enjoyable song, it didn't catch me right away. Because you get in, and while the role-playing aspects play into the songs, I gotta warn you, they're not that big. And let me explain why. When you get into the role-playing aspect, it's in that first song. And the first thing that happens is you get to a point in the song, and you have a choice between three aspects. You have charming, kick butt, and clever. So for my first playthrough, I chose clever, or the blue option. And when it comes to those are going to decide certain dialogue options you can make throughout the rest of the game. And while about 3/4 of the way through the game you get to pick a second aspect, it's not something that's going to make you go, oh wow, I feel like I'm developing my character, right? It's not that kind of a role-playing game. It's you deciding how Grace plays. What kind of role is Grace? Is she the kind that just goes against everybody? She just plays for herself? does she try to play the smart route? Or maybe she likes to appease everybody. Those are kind of your three options that you're given for the role-playing aspect. But like I said, that first song didn't really grab me, especially with that first choice of choosing a trait. I was like, okay, this is fine, I guess. But then you get into the first real song of the game. The first real song that involves Pan and your best friend Freddy and yourself. Oh my goodness. That's when the game truly starts to shine, is in that first one there. Going through that song the first time, playing through it and making the choices throughout the song, I was going, okay, I see it. And then I questioned, how much of this is really changing the song now? What exactly am I changing? And so, like any cool person that plays video games, I went and found the soundtrack. So I went to the soundtrack and I listened to the Pantheon version of that song and was immediately blown away by how different that song was from the one I heard in the game. Now, this is something to keep in mind throughout all the songs, is the first time you play through, or even when you listen to the soundtrack, you might not actually enjoy that version of the song. There are a couple songs later on, and the second song for me, I didn't like the version that I made when playing through the game the first time, but then I went and listened to the Pantheon version and I liked it more. And so that's something you gotta keep in mind, is maybe you don't like a song the first time through, but maybe a different version of the song from one of the 4 soundtracks, or playing through again with different options will change your opinion of the song because of how different it truly is going through. There's one particular song that's way later in the game. It's a 7-minute long section, and it was one of my favorite songs when I did it and made the choices through, and then I went and listened to the soundtrack, and I actually did not enjoy that version nearly as much as I enjoyed mine. And so it made me go, wow, this is incredible. And it actually brings me to my one big gripe with the gameplay of this. At the end, I so badly wanted like a here's your personal soundtrack based on the choices you made in every song throughout the game. I think that would have been so cool to be able to have something like that so you could listen to how your soundtrack went throughout the entire game. I think that would be awesome. And so the other thing with visual novel games, and specifically the songs, right, is how much actually gets changed if you play through the game a second time. That's something that's very important in a visual novel game. People want to know, do my choices really matter, right? And that's something, let's face it, we get so much this day and age in the world of gaming where your decisions matter in this game, and sometimes it just really doesn't. Well, I've got good news. Besides the songs actually having a lot of differences and being able to experience those differently, you do get a lot of different scenarios that you're going to run through if you play through the game a second time and choose to do things differently. So like I said in my first playthrough, I picked Clever as my first trait, and my second trait I picked Charming. So I didn't use Charming too much going through. I kind of decided to stick with a lot of the Clever stuff. I liked a lot of those answers. It just went with how I was going to play the game anyway. So with that first playthrough, I would allow myself to pick through multiple options for the songs. My second playthrough, I went with the Kick Butt trait. And so with that, I made a rule for myself. I was only going to pick the red options in songs. So not only did I get completely different songs than the time I did before, but I also had a bit of a different story when it came to the major decisions coming through. And man, I gotta say, that was cool to see. There are still plenty of things that I could still do after my first playthrough. Plenty of achievements I hadn't unlocked, whether it was like, go do this thing or go do that thing. And the fact that I had only listened to 15 of the 23 songs in the game has me excited to be like, oh yeah, there's still plenty more if I wanted to play through even a third time. So, with all that said, there's a ton of replayability here, being able to go through. You've got those options. If you're into romance, you can romance a few different characters in the game. Not really for me. I did it on the first playthrough. Just to make sure that I could see it and see how that goes. They do have songs that go with the romance options should you decide to go that through, and some other cool stuff that happens as well. But if you go solo throughout the whole thing too, it's also cool. But again, so if you want to do that dang thing, it's nothing fancy. It's not like the whole Persona 5, like, oh, you go and do this, and then you go and do that. It's nothing like that. But it's a nice little touch, especially for a lot of visual novel players who enjoy that thing. Now, the art direction, too, in this game, I also really enjoy. It's that kind of comic, hand-drawn style with every single motion in the game just being a single frame thing. So when Grace walks, it's going to be, here's this frame of her walking, and now she's here, and now she's here, and now she's here. So it's very similar to just reading a comic book. You see a character in one frame here, and now they're over here, but they're still kind of maybe in that same pose or in a very, very slightly different pose. So it's not going to be these crazy animations. Like I said before, it's visual novel style. It's like you're reading a book, turning the pages, and on each page you see a different picture where, oh, they're still walking, they're still going. And it's good. I also like the character designs. While not entirely original, again, I think that still stands strong with my whole statement earlier about not entirely original, but certainly enjoyable. Like Apollo's a surfer dude, Persephone's got this very club attire, Athena, it's just, I'm basically still in my Greek era, essentially. So you got all these characters that, while not entirely original in design, are still great and still work very well throughout the story. Now, I also got to give huge attention to the songs again, and I bring this up here because of the styling towards the characters. There is one song when you go to look for a particular character, I'm not going to spoil who that is, but when you go and meet this character and the song they sing, oh man, it's really good. It gets you right into the mood of who this character is and what they have the ability to do and just what they look to do. And it is so good. Again, not going to tell you who because I don't want to spoil things, but just know there are some fantastic songs that just delve you into the character by their styling and their tune. So, Stray Gods, the role-playing musical, is it worth your time? Is it worth your money? I'd say absolutely, especially if you're a visual novel fan. This is absolutely a visual novel you want to read. It is wonderful. And the fact that still being able to go through and be like, wow, the song is so much different. I like this version better. I like my version better. Is awesome. And the fact that they went through and did all this is just, oh man, it needs a massive round of applause. That's all there is to say about it. The ability to go through, record all of this, Austin Wintory's fantastic music direction here. Man, I fell in love with his music back at Banner Saga, and it is awesome to see it still being done to such a top tier level here in Stray Gods. The amount of time and effort all the actors and the entire team put into this just deserves a massive round of applause. So, Stray Gods, the role-playing musical, definitely a high recommend from myself, especially if you are in the visual novel category of gamers. It is great. It is available on Steam for $29.99, and it is well worth the price. Whether you play through it once or multiple times, even after a first playthrough, I felt satisfied. I thought it was great. I got so much enjoyment out of it. I still listen to the soundtrack on my way to work. There are a few songs, obviously, I listen to more than others, but man, they all have their own charm to them. But ladies and gentlemen, August is a crazy month for indie games. That's why it's been so hard to get out these reviews here. Been one thing after another coming out, trying to play it all and bring you as many reviews as possible. So with all that said, if you enjoyed this review, please leave a like on the video. Don't forget to leave a comment as well. Like I said, there are tons of indie games that come out throughout this month. Trying my best to play them all here, but I'm sure I'll miss a few. So if you have ones that you're looking for, please leave them in the comments below. But that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you all enjoyed. My name is Finn. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Until next time, we'll be here with our eyes on indie.